Hello, this is Carrie O'Shea Gorgon with Appfire. Thanks for coming to the Best Project Portfolio Management Show. Very excited. We have Michelle Bartonico here. She's the Senior Strategist and Project Manager at Trinity University and serves as an advisor to the President and Executive Leadership Team there. She's also a certified project management professional, and she's going to tell us about project charters, what they are, why you need one for your project, what goes into a project charter, and more. So stick around.
You've got questions about PPM, but you're afraid to ask? Well, wait no longer. Appfire presents the Best Project Portfolio Management Show by Appfire.
Michelle, thanks for coming back to the show. So what is a project charter and why do we need one?
Yeah, so it is a foundational document, first and foremost, and it is the foundational element of any successful project. So before you go to step 2 or 3, make sure that you've got this piece ready to go. And what this is it is a way for your team, both your clients or stakeholders and your internal team, to understand the statement and the scope and the objectives, and then who is on the project and what their roles are. So it's essentially a little bit of a contract between you as the project manager and the participants on the project, as well as the organization that you are, or company that you're actually working on this project for. So it provides transparency across the board, not just with those on the project team. And
how important is it that you have one?
It is the most important thing, in my opinion, when you're working on a project, and it has to go, it has to be the first thing you work on, and you don't need to work on it by yourself. You should not work on it by yourself. You can, depending on how fluent you are with the project or campaign you're working on, you might start it out to get something just so it's not a blank sheet of paper when you go into a discovery or kickoff meeting. But ultimately, you're going to want to validate any information that you put into this project charter. And you're going to want to validate that throughout the project. So it is a contract between all of those who are involved, but it also is something that sometimes needs to change and pivot. And as those things happen, it is incredibly important to make sure you go back to that project charter and make sure that the scope, that's usually what changes. Spoiler. The scope
is like how broad it is, what you're expected to do, right? Like how far
the
reaching.
Scope, or if you think about it like your parameters, if somebody asks you to plan a birthday party, you ask them certain questions like, okay, when do you think it should be? Who do you think should be invited? Do you want to have an invitation?
How much money do you have to spend on this party?
How much money do you have? Yeah, where do you think it should be? Do you have a location? Those types of things. It'll begin to designate some parameters for you. And once you have those parameters or scope, that's when you start to validate budget, feasibility, human resource feasibility. So do you have the people to work on this project for the duration of the time you think the project will take? And it really helps you to build out what you're ultimately going to need to manage as a project manager, which is your triangle, your scope, budget, and what is it? Scope, budget, and time. So you're going to need to make sure that those are all in equilibrium. And so this document, this project charter, will help you determine what that looks like. And what goes into that project charter, I have a blog post that I've written recently about just some of the tools that you can use for both the project charter, but also an agenda that'll help keep you on track with just what are people saying? What are they going to potentially forget that they said? And again, just how do you create a level of transparency to make sure that this is a contract that everybody agrees to, that they know they agreed to, and that they revisit from time to time at key milestones.
That they remember agreeing to.
That they remember agreeing to. And yeah, it's okay to revisit it. You should revisit it. It's, projects.
So they can get this at bit.ly/stakeholder tools.
Yes, you can find that article there. And again, one of the things to remember is that people are the ones who work on your projects. And so people are not just linear. And so sometimes they're out sick, sometimes they get pulled on another project. And so going back to that project charter is another reason why it makes it just that important to make sure that you have that document kind of tied up and ready to go in whatever current state it's in. And then if it needs to pivot, you go back, you bring the project team together, and then you revalidate the information.
So it's for sure in writing to start with, right?
It's
Then
for
you
sure
have
in writing. Yeah, no
okay.
gentleman's handshakes. That does not work.
Then you have your kickoff meeting and refine it, and everybody gets a copy of it.
Mhm.
How often do you look at it? Do you do it like every meeting that you have? Do you do it, at regular, I don't know, intervals, I guess?
Yeah, so I won't say it depends because that's annoying. But I will say that with every project, there is some flexibility, and you should determine when you revisit the project charter and really the scope. I mean, the scope and the roles and responsibilities are really what you're referencing. And you can just say that as opposed to, can we revisit the project charter? Because again, you're most likely working with people who are also not project managers. And so that terminology is not going to really resonate. But if
Right.
you say something like, hey, I want to make sure that at every one of our monthly meetings or at every milestone or at the end of every sprint, if you're doing a scrum style, that we do a retrospective and we look at where we are with our project charter, which really we're going to focus in on the roles and responsibilities, revalidate those, make sure everyone's comfortable with the roles that they're in, talk about any learnings, and then look at the scope, track our budget, see how we feel, and then if there's any information that we need to add or doesn't happen that often, delete, remove, that we do that and we shore up this document again.
So at
So
regular intervals, or then, like, if somebody leaves or something, like, "Oh, Joan's
yeah,
leaving the
regular
department."
intervals. Yeah, and the regular intervals, honestly, the reason to do that is so that if you do need to talk to your project team about something that is a little bit hairy, like somebody not pulling their weight or somebody maybe being a little confused or getting out of their lane, instead of causing a potential kind of tension between the project members or with you having to bring up a hard conversation, if you already know that something's coming up a week from now, you can just say, all right, I'm just going to leave it. I'll bring it up at the retrospective. So you don't have to tackle it right there in the moment and then make it a thing. You can just wait for a regular meeting, and it tends to diffuse any sort of situation that you would have had to bring up ad hoc. But it also is a way for you to have an objective document if you do need to bring anything up or if you do need to reference something. Oftentimes, people who aren't on the project will have a question. So somebody's boss who isn't really on the project might say, where are we on this? Or I thought we were going to be including XYZ. It's not just for you, it also helps those individuals on your project say, well, we all agreed. So again, it's not just on that person. All the weight isn't on that person, but we all agreed as a project team that we were going to include these 5 elements. If you have an issue with that or you want to bring anything else up, let me know. I'll bring it up at our next meeting, or I'll let my project manager know so that we can discuss it and see if there are any opportunities within this project scope, or if we need to generate a new project charter and assemble resources to tackle that component.
Michelle, there's big projects, like organization-wide ones, and then there's small ones, like adding a feature to a
Mhm,
software program or
mhm.
something. So do you need a charter for every project? And can they look different? Like, are some more robust and some are a simple, like, email? What's the best approach?
They definitely don't have to all look the same. They, again, probably should be a little bit nuanced. Those are always the way that I've done it and encourage team members, and that they've encouraged me to do it as well. And again, it's to make sure that you're not completely rigid in the way that you're approaching a project, but there are some key elements. And the key elements are basically, why are we doing this to begin with? Who is in charge of this? So who's going to benefit the most from this? Who is the project owner? Who is the strategist? So a strategist would be the equivalent of, in our world in marketing, that would be the person who's going to be providing either the marketing strategy or like the industry insight strategy. So again, you might not always have that particular type of person, but the roles that you would have would be the thing that you would go through. So you would always have, why are we doing XYZ? What exactly is XYZ, which is the scope piece of it? And then who is going to be involved and what do we think their role is going to be? And those are the things that you can hash out and then revalidate throughout the project. And I always have, even if it's a general timeline, oftentimes you'll get a project team or a client who will say, well, I wish I had it yesterday, or I don't know, how long should it take? And, that's always a little bit challenging. And you have to know the scope first. So
Let me get my crystal ball.
Yeah. So try to tackle the scope first. And then if the scope is really, a feature, then again, break that out into what's called a work breakdown structure. And so break that out. And then again, ask the group or come back to the group and say, all right, I talked to my team who's going to actually be doing this work, which is good to do. And they think it's going to take XYZ to do this. And then again, that can go into the charter. If it's a longer term campaign or phased out project, don't be afraid to phase out your timeline. And again, just have micro goals or milestones within your project charter. And if you're working with some clients or stakeholders that are just like, that is way over my head, just again, at the end of the day, they need to know their role. They need to understand your role. And they need to know why they're doing the project. And
templates at bit.ly/stakeholder tools. Check out the article, check out the templates. Michelle, thank you so much for this. If you want more episodes, check out appfire.com for more episodes of the best project portfolio management show.